Hello and welcome to Off the Shelf Reviews.
I was the head of the Arrowhead project.
And I'm Gary. And today we're going to review and discuss The Mist from director Frank Darabont, which came out in 2007. Ian, why don't you give us the synopsis for The Mist?
Well, the story follows Thomas Jane, who plays David. His house has been damaged during a storm, and he and his son go to the local town supermarket to pick up food supplies so that they can rebuild their house. While in the supermarket, the town is enveloped in a mysterious mist, and everybody is sealed inside. But after a while, David starts to question, is he safer inside the supermarket or out in the mist?
From the short novella from Stephen King, The Mist, Frank Darabont's adaptation is most memorable for those that have seen it for its ending, which we'll get to at the end of the review.
Yeah.
But for now, Frank Darabont's no stranger to interpreting Stephen King's work. This is actually the third time that he would have done it. The first being The Shawshank Redemption, followed by The Green Mile, and now ending with The Mist.
This director, like we said, Shawshank Redemption, Green Mile, absolutely phenomenal books. I haven't actually read them myself. I've seen the films, and the films are, absolutely brilliant anyway. And I remember you said to me, read this short story, read this book. There's a short story in it called The Mist. You'll really enjoy it because, I'm a big The Fog fan by John Carpenter. And so The Mist kind of goes along with that kind of stuff. And I sat down and I read the story and I was really, really impressed. Just the way that Stephen King, delivers this story to you, develops the character. It's fucking Stephen King. He gives you nightmares. And the story, read it, it always just stuck with me. Just the imagery of these people being trapped inside this supermarket, kind of Lord of the Flies-esque. People starting to turn on people wanting to go back to their families, people wanting to stay and survive, and these weird creatures actually being out in the mist.
That's right. When I read the book, it was a really exciting read.
Yeah.
All the way to its end. And again, the book has kind of a controversial ending, which, left a bad taste in a lot of people's minds. Again, we'll get to that when we get to the spoiler section.
But when we found out that the film was being made, it was like, we have to watch it. We have to watch it to see if what we imagined transfers to screen. And, you say the name Thomas Jane. Not a lot of really great films pop to mind. I mean, this guy will probably go on about Mutant Chronicles if you give him a chance. And I remember him mainly from The Punisher. The film wasn't that great, but the short movie that they released on YouTube was pretty badass. And so I kind of find Thomas Jane is one of those underrated, underused kind of actors. When he gets put into an acting position, he puts his whole into it. The film itself may be absolutely terrible, but he actually delivers his character. And I really remember him in this film as a loving father and a loving husband. The whole start opening where he's there and I think he does posters for movies.
Yep, and of course, I've got to point it out now, being a Stephen King fan, the image that he's painting or just finishing is an image of lead character from the Dark Tower series.
Yeah.
And of course you can see the Dark Tower in the background. And I'm going to stop geeking out there.
Well, I'm geeking out as well. The Thing poster in the background as well. It's just like, awesome. But, you've got that little storm going on. And you're kind of, you just think it's a storm, and he takes his family down into the basement, and a tree comes through the window, and he comes out, and like I said, loving father, he wants to go get food supplies, because they might be there for a little while. The electric's out and the phones are down, and he's got to go get materials to fix his window. So he speaks to his neighbor, and they have a very, very harsh relationship going on because the neighbor's tree has collapsed and destroyed their boathouse. And then, David gets his son and his neighbor, and they jump into their car and they drive out to the local supermarket. And it's really well done, the way they kind of just walk in and everybody knows each other. Typical Stephen King-esque. I think it's Maine. They normally sticks all of his
it's
books
set in Maine again.
Yeah,
but it was filmed elsewhere.
Once they go inside, like you said, it looks just so brilliant. You've got all these people going around picking up supplies as well. They've been affected by the storm, and everybody's just picking up some shopping so that they can go home. And then Dale from The Walking Dead runs down the street screaming that something's in the mist, and you're like, what's he going on about? He comes in, closes the doors, and the mist is there. It just envelops everything. And like I said, as a fan of the fog, I hate those kind of things.
You're waiting for fishmen with hooks to come out of the mist.
You don't know what's in there.
Well, that's the great thing, is that in the book, you sort of, and in the film, it's sort of suggested to you that there is this arrowhead, this government project or military facility somewhere, which might have opened a doorway to hell or a portal to another dimension. Frank Darabont had an alternate introduction to the film where we would have actually been in that Arrowhead project, watching an experiment go wrong and watching the portal open and seeing the mist come out of it. But he decided, you know what, my audience is a little bit smarter than that. Plus, it'll mess with the pacing. We don't need that, so we'll just get straight into the story. Also, not really knowing whether it is demons from another dimension or whether it is God's wrath, as Miss Carmody would have you believe. It kind of leaves you questioning, who's right, especially when things start to kick off. But as you were just saying, you mentioned Dale from The Walking Dead. I think he's the first of actual 5 actors from this film which appeared in The Walking Dead, which should come as no surprise, as Frank Darabont was the showrunner, the creator of The Walking Dead, before he was fired, like midpoint of season 2, which is around the same time that Dale gets killed off at The Walking Dead. Laurie Holden, who has a particularly big part in this film. She was also the leading lady in The Majestic, which is another Frank Darabont film. You'll see that he likes to use regular actors. We also have William Sadler, who was also in Shawshank and The Green Mile, and also appears in here, and he's just a really great character actor. He's brilliant. The sort of person that you'd be like, I've seen him before, but I can't remember.
I remember him as Death from Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey.
Course.
I remember him as the main guy from Die Hard 2, and he's also in my favourite show, Hawaii Five-0, as the dad who just kind of appears as a ghost every now and again. But he's such a in his other stuff, he's such a really hard-hitting, intelligent character. But in this, he's a dumb kind of local town mechanic.
You got something to say? You count your teeth, because I'm sick to death of your bullshit.
But he plays it so well.
You believe it. You believe that's his real part. And of course, we can't forget that we have Melissa McBride, who's not really done anything too groundbreaking up until this point. She was pretty much unheard of, really. Of course, now we'll all recognize her as one of the main actresses in The Walking Dead, Carol. And she's an absolute badass. She's actually becoming one of my favourite female actresses now. And she delivers a standout performance in just the 1-2 scenes she has in this film.
Well, once the mist envelops the town and everybody's locked inside the store, everybody is wanting to get home. People wanting to stay. They don't know what's out there. They don't really want to stay. And like we said, she doesn't really have a name in the actual film.
She doesn't have a name in the credits, no.
Carol, I'm going to go with Carol.
Go Carol.
She stood there and she's like, I've got to get home to my kids.
I can't stay here. Wanda's looking after little Victor. She's only 8. Sometimes she forgets she's supposed to be watching him, I told them I'd only be gone a few minutes. She's only 8.
I've got to get home, and it's really, really well acted. She either delivers it really well, or it's written really well for her. And she's looking for somebody to come with her, to walk her home, and nobody wants to. Nobody's brave enough. Nobody knows what's going on. They've
I'll
all got their
also
own
point
problems.
out here that our main hero of the film also doesn't help her.
You...
Man, please. I got my own boy to worry about.
Well, but in his defense, he's got his own son to look after, and he doesn't know. He doesn't just want to, go out there and get hit by a car or some kind of giant, huge monster. But yeah, she just looks at everybody, and nobody's coming with her. She just walks out into the mist, and the way she just walks out and disappears into the mist, the image of the Mist it's like an actor itself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, once people start to walk out into it and they disappear, that's it. You don't know what's happened to them.
And I will say that the special effects work for The Mist is, again, pretty fantastic. They actually had, you know, a set which they filled with mist.
Yeah.
And then at other times it was completely CGI mist. And you really can't tell the difference throughout the film.
Yeah.
My favourite character in the film is Ollie, played fantastically by Toby Jones.
Oh, he's
and
brilliant
he was
actor.
great in Infamous and The Painted Veil.
Well, he was also brilliant in Captain America: The Winter Soldier as Zemo Ion.
Absolutely. We also have another interesting actor called Sam Witwer,
Yeah.
who you'll recognise as Crashdown from Battlestar Galactica, and he was also in the Star Wars
Force
Unleashed video games.
Yeah, and you also he has kind of like a weird kind of relationship with the teller.
Yes,
And I
she
mean,
is again another
well-known actress. And this is the thing, you know, the Mist kind of went completely under the radar when it first came out. You know, not a lot
Most
of
people would expect it to just be another monster movie based on Stephen King, you know.
But since that point, all these actors, you know, like we said, a lot of them went off to The Walking Dead. And, you know, if you're a fan of The Walking Dead, you'll recognise all of these people just for their screen presence in The Walking Dead. Others have done massively box office smashing films. And here they all are, enclosed in this tiny supermarket.
Including Shermanator?
Ah, Shermanator. I was about to bring the Shermanator up.
All right. I am the Shermanator.
You know, the film carries on and they go out into the loading dock and realise that something is blocking the generator. So they're just like, you know, we hadn't actually gone out into the Mist yet. Nobody had. And the Shermanator, played by Chris Owen, you know, he's just a bag boy, and he's kind of being egged on by William Sadler's character and his buddy to go out there and fix this stuff. And Thomas Jane's like, dude, I just saw something crushing against the door. I don't know what it was, but I don't think you should go out there. And they're all just kind of laughing and joking, and they lift up the shutters, and they're about to get ready to go out, still laughing and joking, and the tentacle comes in. The tentacle comes out of the Mist.
Pretty scary, ain't it, Norm?
Yeah, right.
Norm? Norm? What the fuck? Get it off! Get it off! Get this freaking thing off me! Get it off! Help me! Help me! Help me!
I was like, well, either Cthulhu's on the other side, or the thing from Deep Rising's just surfaced, or it's some kind of Japanese manga beast, and it's going to do strange things to Sherman. It's gross. I mean, it's a CGI effect that comes in, but the practical effect on him is like, that's gross. I mean, that's just ripped like a chunk of his leg off, and then when it rips a chunk of his chest off, you're just like, yeah, you're boned.
Yeah.
But it's great because the struggle carries on. You know, you see all these other tentacles coming in. You see Ollie go for the axe.
Yeah.
You see the other guy sort of cowering in the background as these tentacle teeth things come at you. And they drag the poor bastard off.
It's what I loved about it was the fact that reading it in the novella transferred brilliantly to screen.
Almost exactly.
Yeah.
Almost exactly, as I imagined it.
Yeah, that's it. You're reading it in the story that this thing comes in. You don't get much description from it, but it grabs the Shermanator and it pulls him out. And then when you're seeing it on the screen, like Gary said, CGI tentacle, practical effect, ripping chunks off, and then you just see him get pulled out. And they are all fighting. Thomas Jane is doing his best to keep him inside, but he can't. He's being attacked himself, and then he's just gone. And you kind of just hear his scream.
Yeah. which does then move on into what I would like to talk about with this film, other than the monsters and the effects, is, again, well, we've just already mentioned all the actors, but how good a damn job they do.
Yeah.
The sequence straight afterwards with the punch-up and, the accusations and the blame, and these characters sort of accepting that it's their fault that Norm's just dead.
Yeah.
This kid just died because of them, and things start to sink in on them, and you watch these characters undergo so much stress that all of the interactions between the other characters just invests you straight into the events because they feel like real people.
Yeah. It's the development of the fear, it's they go back out into the store and they start trying to explain it to everybody else, and everybody else is just like, yeah, whatever, where's Norm, get him back here. And you're just like, you're going to get scared in a minute because we're going to take you back there and we're going to show you this bit that we chopped off, and that's where the fear starts to come in, where people are just like, what the hell, what do we do, who do we follow, where's the army, where's the police, where are the people that are trying to protect us? No, we've got to start protecting ourselves from this. How the fuck do you protect yourself from that? And you start to realize that the monsters out in the mist aren't as scary as some of the monsters that will start to appear in the store.
Mrs. Carmody, she obviously is sort of the film's antagonist. She's the one who rallies everyone up and sort of generates the mob mentality that, they're all sinners and that they're all going to be punished in some way unless,
they give themselves to God. And I'm like a lot of the people in the store, I'm like, woman, God ain't here right now. God did not do this. It's like that guy's lying to her where he's just like,
hey, crazy lady, I believe in God too. I just don't think he's the bloodthirsty asshole you make him out to be.
Well, you take that up with the devil when you run into him. You just chat it over at your leisure.
And that's it. Her attitude. She has that close encounter with another monster later on, and that thing should have killed her. That thing.
Again, it was a divine intervention that kept her alive at that point.
No, she just stood completely still. That's it. She believed it was God protecting her. God isn't protecting her. This would be like the third time I've seen this film, and I'm always like, you know what? If God's going to protect you, you go outside. You go outside and see how far you get. See how far God went up. No.
We're going to send out this lorry driver, this biker dude.
Yeah.
Who's covered in tats. Looks like he can handle himself.
Well, that's it. You got David's neighbor as well. He's rallied a bunch of people, and he's just like, yeah, we're all going. We're all going outside, and that's it. They go outside. You never see them again. And they say to the lorry driver, they're just like, look, we're going to tie this rope around your waist and see if you can get at least 300 feet because, we want to see how safe it is out there. And it's one of my favorite scenes, actually. He goes out there and you're tense because you're just like, we know something's out there, so we just want to see what happens. And the rope goes limp and then it goes up in the air and they start pulling it back and there's blood all on it, which is kind of weird because there's blood like before they actually get to the biker's legs. Just his legs. And you're just like, something took his top bit. What took his top bit?
At the road! Shut the door!
Do you see? Now do you believe?
On that, like we said, the religious nut starts to take control more of the store, and you start to realize that the actual real thinking people start to dwindle down because everybody is praying, everybody is ready to follow the word of God to protect themselves, yet
in times of true desperation, it's not unexcusable for these people to flock to her because she seems to be making sense. The film doesn't outright villainize her.
No.
Because, to the other extras that are in there, because when she says, about certain things, like she's like, now that the beast is fed, we can all sleep tonight, it won't attack again.
The beast will leave us alone tonight. Tomorrow we'll just have to wait and see.
and it doesn't.
But it doesn't, because they're not drawing as much attention to themselves as they normally would. I mean, they board up all of the... they cover the windows at the front with, like, dog food and soil and stuff like that. And then everybody turns on a bunch of lights, which start to lure these weird insects to the window.
They are awesome.
Yeah, they're awesome, they're brilliant. And people are like, they're attracted by the lights. So they start flicking the lights off. And then these weird pterodactyl flying beasts start to attack.
Shit!
It's not God. You know, it's evolution.
It's like its own ecosystem has burst out, predators and prey.
That's how I see it. Whatever happened in the Arrowhead Project, the mist is kind of like the atmosphere from another world. You know, so these things are able to survive only by breathing this mist, which obviously doesn't have any harm to humans as well. But the insects are like the smallest, the tiniest species, even though they're like as big as a man's head. You know, and then the flying things are attacking them. And then they come across humans and start to eat them and go, ooh, that's quite nice, actually. Might have a bit more of that. That's nothing to do with God. You know? Yeah, okay, there is that sequence where she is stood there and this thing is this fly is walking up her chest. But if she had screamed like the teller had screamed, she'd have been dead as well. But she didn't. She's like, you know, if you want to kill me, kill me. You know, my soul is yours. And it doesn't kill her. I would have gone... Ha! That just means he doesn't want you.
My life for you. Your will be done.
You know, this was a really low budget film. I think it was about 18 million. I know it's 18 million is a low budget, but it's really no budget for a film of this magnitude. Usually, Frank Darabont has said that a normal time for production or pre-production is about 5 months before he gets into a film. He had 6 weeks on The Mist. And I think they also shot it in about 6 weeks as well, which is also record-breaking time for Frank Darabont. But that was because he hired in camera operators and editors from The Shield, which he'd also guest directed on, and which, of course, he also pulled actors from. Which, of course, saved a lot of money so that they could quickly, on the fly, with all the camera work, just move around. Yeah. And it gives it a very documentary, guerrilla-esque style to it, which is what, for me, invests me in even closer, because when these characters are having these brilliant pieces of dialogue, when there's, you know, sometimes when there's really intimate moments between father and son, the camera's right up in them close. Yeah, yeah. And you get other times when, after the outbreak, some of the characters have not made it, and Laurie, Holden's character's walking over and she looks down, and we don't get to see it straight away, and the camera follows her, and the camera tells you what's happened just by panning and seeing her. You see that she's dead, and then before you realise she killed herself, it was an overdose. Yeah. You know, so the camera is also telling you the story. It's just, again, it just immerses you.
But that's it. It just shows how it does show you how brilliant some of these actors are, that they're able to convey so much just between them and the camera. Like you said, that scene with the woman who's killed herself, I mean, she'd spent a lot of the film looking after David's son.
She did actually have an extended sequence in the film, which became a deleted scene where she saved him even further during the outbreak, but it was cut. A lot of scenes were cut just for pacing, which is why I'll say the pacing is really good for a 2-hour film.
But just like scene, you know, Laurie Holden's character comes along, looks down, sees the dead body, and you realise, oh, she's dead. I didn't even know her name. You know, I didn't even know what she did, but I've seen her in so many scenes leading up to this, but now she's dead, I feel kind of bad. You know, you have a lot of characters, like when the pterodactyls attack, and you have that guy trying to set fire to the mop. Yeah. And he sets fire to it, and he accidentally kicks the bucket over and sets himself on fire. You don't even know his name until after he's set on fire, and they're looking for medicine to take care of him. And you're just like, that guy's dead, but I feel really bad, you know? Then you've got the religious nut running around conveying to everybody that they should be praying to God to protect themselves. And I'm just like, throw her ass outside. Throw it out.
Do you want that to happen, people? No. 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 kind of hubris that brought the wrath of God in the first place. This kind of pride and defiance of the...
Shut up, you miserable buzzard.
David has decided that they need medicine to help. I think his name was Joe, the guy who set himself on fire. You know, we need to help him. Nobody wants them to go because they're all going to end up dead. But they're like, look, we need to at least try. And they go into the pharmacy and they find the medicine, but then they find a military policeman that you saw at the beginning, and he's attached to the wall, covered in webs, and he's screaming about how sorry he is, and how it's their fault. And then all of a sudden, spiders start popping out of his face.
When that one pops out of his cheek, it still makes my skin crawl, especially when his body hits the ground.
When he hits the floor, and he just explodes.
How is he still alive with that many spiders inside him?
And then you got the big ones, and the big ones shoot this acidic web, and you know, if you get hit by that, you are dead. And so they have this whole elaborate fight sequence, and they're shooting them and they're killing them, and they're just like, look, just get out of here. So they rush back to the supermarket, and so David starts to quiz the army guy, like, what do you know? That MP knew something. He was sorry for something. You need to tell me. And they go to look for the soldier's two buddies, and just like in the novel, they've killed themselves. They've hung themselves in the loading dock because they knew something and they didn't want to get blamed for it. But William Sadler's character watches the group go into the loading dock, and is suspicious. So he sneaks in, hears them start talking, immediately grabs the soldier and pulls him back outside for Mrs. Crazy Nutball.
And it is such a riveting scene to watch these people really become the mob.
Yeah.
When, you know, the butcher guy shanks him. And again. And again. And you're hearing him screaming out.
Yeah.
I not felt that much sympathy for many of the other characters at this point. But when he's being ushered out and thrown out there, it's just like, God damn, that's really cold.
That's it. And they're saying, oh, it's like you said, she says, oh, you know, the beast has been fed, you know, it won't attack us. But I'm like, well, that doesn't mean that's God's work. You know, God wants you to feed people to the monsters, because that starts to make you question what happens when you start to run out of people to blame. There is a big kind of science versus religion feel to this film. You know, you start to question, should people start messing with this kind of stuff? You know, then you've got the other side where, you know, like with the religious nut, she's like, we shouldn't have broken the atom, and we shouldn't be sinning, and this is a plague upon us, and this was predicted in the Bible. So you've got this whole science versus religion theme running all the way through. But the thing that just keeps this film going for me, and it's a personal thing myself, is the relationship between David and his son. You know, his son is really upset, just wants to get home to his mother.
I usually have big problems with child actors. They never really feel right. But this kid was fantastic.
Yeah.
In the sequence when his dad is leaving him to go to the pharmaceutical store, and he's there, tears, snotty face. I mean, there was no makeup effects. There was all him. That was him acting, and I think that was his 6th take.
Yeah.
And you know, he just nailed it. There was not a single point in the film where I was like, this child actor is just a child actor. It didn't break the illusion whatsoever. And as you were saying, the chemistry between them two felt genuine.
It's like the sequence where they're lying on the floor and they're trying to get to sleep, and the boy says to him, like, you know, you need to promise me. Mm-hmm. You need to promise me that you will not let these monsters eat me.
Inside and out.
Yeah, and I'm just like, that is just a really heartfelt scene, because just like in the book, you know, the dad wants to protect. He cares for everybody else. But when it really comes down to it, he will not risk his son's life to protect other people. He will risk his own life to protect his son, and everybody else can just take care of themselves.
Which is where it gets to the pivotal point in the film when they decide they have to leave.
Yeah.
Because Mrs. Carmody's posse is getting pretty much out of control, and their heads are next up for the chopping block.
Yeah.
So they decide to steal some supplies, and a select few of them are going to make a run for it. Of course, Mrs. Carmody has some issues with this, which causes the last conflict with her and the group, and Ollie pretty much had enough of this shit.
Yeah.
Shoots her down.
God didn't stop that bullet, did he?
He did not. But unfortunately, this is where we lose my favourite character in the film. You know, at this point, he's been David's wingman.
Yeah.
He's the one who's been there to help him talk to the others, to facilitate the plans, and to make sure that everybody's okay. He's the one dishing out blankets and food.
Yeah.
He's the one with the gun who actually can take care of himself. Yet he gets slightly separated outside, and one of the big bastards just picks him up, and that's the end of Ollie.
No, Ollie. It's that big smile he has on his face when he gets to the car and he opens up the door and he's just like, hey guys, and they all just stop. They all just stop in
It's
their
like,
tracks.
it's behind me, isn't it?
Yeah, it's one of those behind me situations. He turns around, this thing just picks him up and chews him, and the gun falls onto the car. And this is the point where I'm just like, David, leave the gun. Do not take the gun with you. And yeah, there's a whole tense sequence where he's reaching for the gun. There's a spider coming, and I'm just like, leave the gun. Everybody's screaming to him to leave the gun. And he gets it, closes the door, and they all start to drive off.
And that's where the book ends. And that's where the film doesn't end. We've still got another 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So this is where we're going to say spoilers.
Spoilers.
Seriously, spoilers. Once they've left the area, there's a scene when a giant, and I mean giant, Lovecraftian creature just walks across the highway or wherever it is they are. So large is this beast that the ground tremors and shakes as it passes.
Yeah.
And you're just, when you're reading the book, you described this magnificent giant beast. You're just like, all manner of living hell has come out of this mist.
Yeah.
And there's no way of knowing how far this mist has travelled, whether it's continuing to seep out of wherever it's coming from. Has it already engulfed the planet? I've come across people that have said, I used to read Stephen King all the time, and I read that ending and went, fuck you, Stephen King, because you just went, fuck you to your fans. And I'm like, you know what? Stephen King does have a problem with his endings. He's always said he doesn't know how always to finish his books.
Yeah.
But The Mist, for me, it works because it was at that point where it could end as a book and let your imagination do the rest.
Yeah.
But in terms of films really do need to have an ending because, open-ended films only really bring you back for sequels unnecessarily so.
Yeah.
So again, with the film, they're driving along, and it's not soon after, actually, that the creature, we get to see it. And it's magnificence.
Yeah.
And it is freaking epic. And it almost didn't even make it into the film because of, budgetary reasons. But the special effects guys turned to Frank and said, this is going in your film, it's got to. This is what most people remember from the book. It's this giant creature.
I love the bit before that where they actually go back to David's house, and he, just like in the book, he comes across his wife who's been webbed up by the spider.
Because the tree that broke the window earlier
left open and the mist has got in, and so you feel really bad for the characters. And like I said, just like the book, they drive along, they come across this huge creature, and you're just like, it's envisioned everything you imagine when you're reading the story. It's all there, but you feel kind of hollow because, like we said, are they the last few people alive? Are their lives going to end inside this car? And they go past the creature and they carry on driving through the mist, and it's absolutely brilliant. And then the car kind of conks out of gas. You take this.
It's truly, truly hopeless. I mean, there appears to be absolutely no end to this mist, and the film, I will say, doesn't do a very good job of establishing how long they've been driving since leaving the the food store.
Yeah.
In the book, you get a good sense that they've been driving for days or, a long time and never got out the other side of the mist. So in the film, we actually realize that they're driving down the same road that that he was coming to with his boy, from his house anyway. It looks very similar. But they've run out of gas. There seems to be no end to the mist. The few people that knew anything about the project committed suicide back there, which would lead you to believe if they committed suicide, were they just expecting to be blamed for it? They weren't even there. And yet they commit suicide. Is it because they know which dimension they opened it up to and as a result realized there is no way out of this but to kill ourselves? Those guys that killed themselves knew help wasn't coming. That sets your mindset to the other characters of also seeing that they've committed suicide. Other civilians have committed suicide. People are getting mutilated in horrible, brutal ways, being infested with spiders, flesh-eating spiders, creatures that can, tear you in two. And so the main character sat there with a gun, and he's got 4 bullets, and there are 5 of them in the car. Now, I'm also going to say a lot of people were really pissed off because they were like, well, Stephen King's book ending, he never went in this direction. And I will say now, if you do reread the Stephen King book, the character when he's driving admits to himself, he never says it out loud, but he admits to himself how depressing it is, how dark and how hopeless it is now. And he makes a note. I've got 4 bullets and there are 5 of us. That's in the book.
Yeah.
But Frank takes that a little bit further and decides the lead character is now going to execute everybody in the car, other than himself. Now, it's never said. The character also, he never says it, but, it's kind of the other characters that are in the car are all instantly aware of what he's thinking. Because before he does it, the music starts to kick in and these characters have this beautiful moment where none of them are really in the car anymore. The old guy, he's sort of looking off into the distance. The old lady, she's looking off into the distance. They're mentally putting themselves in another place, their happy place, because they know that what's coming, they're facing their mortality.
When his son wakes up, it's the look in the son's eyes. You kind of get a close up of the boy's eyes, and it's like he can see. You can't see it, but it's like he's looking at his dad pointing a gun at him, and then it cuts to the outside, and you hear those 4 gunshots, and then it cuts back to David inside. They're all dead, and he's screaming. He's screaming, and he's got the gun in his mouth, and he's praying that there's another bullet in there, but there's not. He's angry, he's upset, he storms out of the car, he starts screaming that the creatures are going to come and just end his life really quickly. And then the fucking army turns up.
I shouldn't laugh.
You shouldn't laugh, dude. Should not laugh. But this is the thing. I've spoken to people, and people are like, that ending is so funny. The ending is so funny. If he just waited 3 minutes, the army would have turned up and protected them. And I say to them, you're not putting yourself in the mindset. To you, you're just watching this film, probably playing on your phone and playing games on Facebook. You're not actually,
invested in the
that's
people,
it.
the characters.
You're not invested in the characters. You haven't read the story. You're not imagining that this film is developed. You're not putting yourself in the position of a father who has come to the point where there is no end. There is nothing else out there. The mist, there is nothing but the mist. And he doesn't want to see his son get eaten by a monster. He himself doesn't want to get eaten by a monster. But when you're sat there in the car, when it's the Armageddon, the apocalypse, there's nothing else. What other choice have you got?
You have the choice of taking a bullet or something far worse that your imagination can't even
That's
foresee.
it.
And so, yeah, he's saving his boy that fate. Now, some people would argue, that they were in no immediate threat at the point when they did it, because nothing attacked the car once. Nothing was attacking the car when he did it. They could have survived. They could have gone, okay, we're out of fuel, now we're going to run. Or, you know, there was no last gasp of survival. There was no, I'm going to take my boy, and then as soon as, you know, the instant where it's too late, then I'll shoot him if I've got the chance. There was no last chance of, you know, wanting to try and survive this. But like I said, it's because it was so hopeless.
Yeah, that's it. You know, they could have tried to make a run for it if they. But what if they'd gotten out of the car and something had just snatched them from the car? Instantly, and you know, he'd had to have watched his son get eaten before eating himself. This is the thing, the investment in the character. There are so much things going on in their heads. Just like we said, reading the book and watching it in the film, they've spent days in the supermarket. Mm-hmm. You know, we don't really know how long, but they've spent a while there. You know, and nobody has come to save them. And you know, okay, at the same time, the army turning up is such a traumatizing moment because, you know, David realizes if he had just waited 2 more minutes, they'd have been found. You then watch an army truck drive past with Carol on board with her 2 children, and it dawns on you that if he'd left with his son with her, they could have all been safe. But this is it. The ending gives you... the ending is traumatizing. It's depressing. And it will fill you with lots of what-ifs. But what-ifs don't really work if there's no actual bit to follow it. It's just a what-if. What if the car had just exploded? You know, what if he'd shot himself first? You know, putting his middle finger up at everybody. There are many what-ifs. But the fact that you've been there with him and his son for all this time, and like I said, from a personal point of view, when his son shoots him that look, and then you hear those 4 gun blasts, I
find it really hard not to tear up in that last sequence. It is such an emotional gut punch. Having a really dramatic ending, is it done just for shock value? Just so that people remember it and talk about it? Yes and no.
Yeah.
I mean, it was done for that, but Frank Darabont said that he had this idea for the end ending 20 years before he even got to make the film. So he already knew in mind that this is the ending he wanted. So it wasn't just for shock value. For me, it really does feel like a logical continuation of the characters, especially after the thing we've just seen them go through.
It's also nice as well because, you know, you don't want the film to be exactly like the book, because if the film is exactly like the book, there's no different. You might as well just read the book and make up your own imagination. Making an ending makes it stand out. You know, people will stop and go, wow.
Well, Stephen King always said he'd wish he'd come up with that ending. Well, technically he already did come up with the ending. It was just in his text somewhere.
Yeah.
I will also say before we close this section is that the music, I think it was called The Dead Can Dance. And
so
that
haunting.
piece of music is so haunting. I mean, it really also cements how everyone in the car is feeling, the acceptance of the no hope to its conclusion. Absolutely powerful stuff. Which is why, I mean, when we talk about favourite scenes in the film, you know, we usually say favourite or most memorable. And of course the ending is the most memorable part of the film.
Yeah.
But I guess I'll say, you know, there's a sequence that I really like, as that's when the guy's about to go outside and Ollie's like, here, take my knife. And it's just this tiny little knife when the guy pulls out his giant freaking machete in comparison anyway. The spider creatures with the human faces. The fact that it goes from being an actual puppet on the car to a CGI one that crawls over it and you can't tell the difference. All of the creatures are memorable. All of the characters are memorable.
My favourite scenes, you know, barring the ending, which I really do not want to go in again. My favourite scene one is that guy with the knife going out into the car park. You know, the way the rope just works, and the fact that, you know, like we said, you know, they're on a set and they're looking out into the mist, and all you've got is this rope, but you're just watching, you're waiting to see what happens. My other favourite scene as well is where David and Ollie and Laura Holden's character and a few of the actual sane people are all in the loading dock discussing about how they need to leave because, you know, the crazy bitch is starting to get a cult following. And Laura Holden's character is like, but we're a civilized society, you know, we won't be turning on each other like that. And each one of the guys kind of brings in like an example of why this is going to happen, why they're going to do this, you know, why people seek safety even in the most stupidest places like religion or science and all these things. And the fact that, you know, if you want to survive, you either join them or you get sacrificed by them. I just thought it just summed up the whole message that the mob would bring on later on. It's really, really well done.
I, without any hesitations, recommend The Mist. It is a fantastic horror sci-fi film. There's, you know, it's a real actor's piece as well. I mean, it's not a teen slasher film.
No.
It's not just a gimmicky monster film. There's some really great actor moments in the film that just invest you into it. It's really intense. It's really atmospheric. There's only a few cheap jump scares, but the creature effects, special effects, music, editing, it is one of the greatest horror films of our time.
I definitely recommend it. If you're a fan of Stephen King adaptations into film, you know, Shawshank Redemption, Green Mile, Misery, you know, Maximum Overdrive. Maximum Overdrive. You know, if you're a fan of his work being adapted into films, then The Mist is definitely up there. If you've read the story and aren't too sure about watching the ending, just stop it when that big creature comes walking across. Just, of course. Just stop it there.
There's nothing wrong with doing that.
Yeah,
I mean, the first time I watched the film after they were driving away, I was getting ready to put my shoes back on. And it was, it's still going. I was like, well, in my mind's eye, my own imagination's already created all the sequels to it. So
at the same time, as a separate note, the ending is truly memorable.
Thanks for watching Off the Shelf Reviews.